Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I want to give you guys a bit of a throwback to the times of old of Hearthstone. When we first started getting into the game, it's been going on almost 6 years now. Can you believe that? Hearthstone's that old, yet somehow we have a lot of fun just about every time we play it. Still, crazy. Now, today I want to give you guys a list of cards that I thought were really good when I first played them, and even the first few times I played them. This is an era of Hearthstone. Let's just call it the first, 4 to 6 weeks of play. It kind of ended around the time, maybe a few weeks after the first BlizzCon Invitational. At that point, stats were actually coming out from what was good, what wasn't. People were starting to play crazy aggro decks. People started to understand what was actually really good in the game. But up until that point, it was us, our individual opinions that dictated what was played and what was not played. And there's some pretty hilarious cards on my list of cards I thought were really good, but maybe not really all that good after a long history of expansions. Starting off number 10, we have Stormwind Champion. Stormwind Champion was a pretty interesting card. I really love to play it. I really love to just, slam it after I'm zerging it up. I ended up using Stormwind Champion in Divine Favor aggressive Paladin decks when I was testing decks, trying basically everything out there in order to get prepared for the first big tournament, the BlizzCon Invitational. I was so sad when I had to cut Stormwind Champion from my aggro Paladin deck. Now, by today's standards, Stormwind Champion is a bit of a joke card, but, trading up is no small deal in this game. Even back then, that has stayed true over the years. Number 9, Ironbark Protector. Believe it or not, a lot of the time when people would just make a druid deck back then, they would just include this card. People didn't have stats on win rates. They didn't have any of that. They're just like, well, I need some taunts, and might as well make them big because, I'm probably just going to need taunts around the time I'm about to die. So a late game taunt with good stats, that's just gotta be good, right? Right? No? Well, it's an 8 mana 8/8. How bad can it be? Well, it turns out it's pretty bad. It actually turned up that even back then, people started to get a bit wise with the big minions and Big Game Hunter. Big Game Hunter made this card so crappy, so fast, it was actually hilarious. Argent Protector. Now, Argent Protector is obviously a pretty strong card. I certainly thought it was a really strong card, but I overplayed this card like crazy. It was one of my Paladin starter pack cards. Basically, before I would actually consider what type of Paladin deck I would make, I would include a few other cards on this list along with Argent Protector. It's like, there's no way this card is bad. But it turned out that this card is actually pretty mediocre because in terms of the aggro game, just getting on the board to begin with is the biggest challenge. Argent Protector is an extremely good card if you're going toe-to-toe on the board. If you have something attacking from the previous turn, Argent Protector is really good. But if you don't, Argent Protector is really bad. So actually, people found out probably within the first year of Hearthstone that these type of cards were not quite as good as we had originally thought. Number 7 on my list is Stranglethorn Tiger. Now, this one might throw some people by a surprise, but Stranglethorn Tiger at some points throughout Hearthstone's history was actually used in mid-range hunter decks. Budget hunter decks use Stranglethorn Tiger instead of Savannah Highmane, for example. It's without a doubt a very strong card. It's not like an overpowered card, but it's a pretty strong card. But I thought it was really crazy. I actually considered using a deck for that first BlizzCon Invitational tournament that was based around Stranglethorn Tiger. I would play this and then use a bunch of Rock Biters and Abusive Sergeants and then Wind Fury down my opponent playing Shaman. It's legitimate, okay? Yeah, it doesn't do so well against taunts, but it does okay against board clears. Flamestrike was basically the cap of the board clears being played back then, and it survived it. I didn't end up playing the deck because I realized that if both Stranglethorn Tigers were near the bottom of my deck, I just couldn't win. So that was a bit of a deal breaker. True Silver Champion is 6th on my list. True Silver Champion is obviously a pretty good card, but it fell off very early. Again, in the first year of Hearthstone, it started falling off pretty hard. People realized that the game is a lot more aggressive. A lot of minions that, are played in the aggressive decks, they need to be killed several times over. They have divine shields. They have on-play effects. They don't just have like 4/4 in stats and you kill them with True Silver and then kill the next one your opponent plays. It just doesn't work out that way. True Silver Champion is actually an overrated card, and it breaks my heart to say that. This is once again, one of my starter package Paladin cards. Make a Paladin deck, first card in, True Silver Champion. That's right. Next up, Temple Enforcer. Now you might think, like, Crip, how in the world is Temple Enforcer going to be a good card? Please, Crip, what are you talking about? Well, I put my money where my mouth is, all right? I ended up taking a double Temple Enforcer priest deck to that same BlizzCon Invitational tournament. My idea was to combine Temple Enforcer with Defender of Argus, so if I have anything on the board from the previous turn, Temple Enforcer plus Defender of Argus creates 2 ginormous taunts, and your opponent's typically not going to be able to get through them to kill you, right? Well, that was okay, but again, weeks later, the really good aggressive decks started coming out, and obviously Priest having minions from the previous turns. What a joke that is. Water Elemental. Water Elemental is not only like insane card, I thought at least, well, most people thought, but I actually complained. It's like, how in the world does Mage have such an insane card? Like, I would play a 4-mana 3/6 in just about every class, let alone one that can freeze things, and later on, the Elemental tag was even relevant. How is this card even balanced? Well, it's kind of balanced in the way that, again, after like the first month of play, aggressive decks were typically a lot faster than turn 4, and control decks tried to use spells to deal with the early game and bigger minions to actually fight it out in the late game. Water Elemental, while still a very strong 4-drop, it's kind of lost its place in the game as a whole. Dark Iron Dwarf is 3rd on my list. Dark Iron Dwarf is just one of the classics that I'd put in just about every single deck. If I have a minion, I buff it up and throw him into your minion, get some value, 4-mana 4/4. Okay, this isn't the time of like Chillwind Yetis, okay? And no one doubted the Chillwind Yeti, so I couldn't believe that people actually didn't play Dark Iron Dwarf as much as I did. I even put Dark Iron Dwarf in so many decks, I would just put Big Game Hunter in just about every deck as well, because I just love doing that combo. My opponent has a 5-attack dude, there's Big Game Hunter, his guy, after using the Dark Iron buff on him. And have to keep in mind, this is at a time where Big Game Hunter was a 3-cost minion, right? So not bad at all. But it turns out, again, aggro decks are faster, slower decks are slower. There just wasn't a place for these type of cards in the game. Loot Hoarder. You guys remember like the Old Gods meme? Well, it's got 2 Loot Hoarders and a N'Zoth. It's a Crip deck. Now, I just love Loot Hoarder from the very beginning. It's my favorite like cycling card. If this gets killed, you just draw something else. I just basically put Loot Hoarder in every single deck that I made. And you guys know, over the years, I've been the type of player to just try something that I want to play. And it was just kind of an easy inclusion. Most of the time when I make a deck, I want to play some kind of combo deck or some kind of crazy control deck with some, cute shit, basically. So how is Loot Hoarder going to work? Well, it's going to be my 2-drop. Not exactly. Obviously, I lost a lot of games against aggro over the years. Loot Hoarder does not hold up against aggro, but otherwise, he's not bad. Just turns out that Loot Hoarder is not really included in any top-tier deck just about ever. Number 1 on cards I thought were really good, but actually maybe kind of not. Holy Wrath. That's right. Now, Holy Wrath I actually did bring to tournaments. At the time of the first ESGN tournament, people were trying to discover what the good decks are, and Control Paladin was a relatively popular deck, and some people even used Giants in the Control Paladin, and of course, I was one of those people, and I thought, dude, if I'm playing Control Paladin and I have Giants, and the deck's like 50% chance to win, whatever, I can just include Holy Wrath. It doesn't hurt the deck too much overall, and 5% of my games or so, I just automatically win them. Sounds good, right? It actually did sound pretty good, because we actually won that tournament, and I convinced most of the players on my team to run Holy Wrath in their slow Paladin decks. Now, it turns out Until very recently with Shirvala and the cycling deck mechanics that you guys know so well with the Bazooka Din decks I've been making, Holy Wrath has not had much of an appearance over the years, but nevertheless, I've had fun with it throughout that time. You guys have some cool cards you thought you were good? Maybe not? Let me know, and maybe I'll have another list for you guys.